Welcome back to Centennial Conversations, a series of podcasts about the first 100 years of Gavilan College. I'm Dana Young, and we're here with Leah Halper, who just completed writing a history of Gavilan College. Last time when we were together, we talked about the World War II period and how it impacted San Benito Junior College and the area. Today, we're going to talk about the post-war era through the 1950s. Welcome back, Leah.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge how early Grant Richards and Geronimo Garcia have been getting up to do these podcasts. And you also, who have a drive, I really appreciate it. And I hope that they are gloriously received because some love and work have really gone into them.
Well, thank you so much for doing the work and for helping us better understand the work you did. So let's get started. What changed for the San Benito College after World War II?
Well, I'm going to resist the temptation to say everything, even though that would be kind of accurate. The world changed. That war was such a turning point for the world, for the U.S., for the state, for the region, for the college. So I'll confine myself to briefly mentioning, as every historian teaches in a California history class, there were two booms. There was a baby boom that's going to change everything forever. The GIs came home and had lots of babies, and then society had to accommodate those babies. And then in California, it took a few years, actually. It wasn't immediate, but there was a massive conversion to peacetime economy, and all of those manufacturers of ships and planes and so forth converted, and they were making vehicles for consumers and electronics and consumer goods. So at the same time, there's a housing and construction boom because schools and houses and hospitals have to be built for that huge number of babies who are coming down the pike. And then you need pediatricians and you need teachers. So there's a need for colleges to teach these professionals how to handle all these baby boomers. So California really experienced a boom, and it was in full swing by the mid-50s, for sure.
And that boom, it still resonates today, yes?
Well, you and I and probably Grant and, we're all still here. A lot of those GIs were able to go to college because of the GI Bill, and that created a whole different college culture. I mean, from what I've heard, more serious students coming into the colleges. And then the Sputnik launch in 1957 frightened Congress into allocating more money to support science and math education, which also gave a boost to education at every level. And then let's not forget, we have a population that can't necessarily afford to go to college on its own today. And back then, in 1958, the first law to provide low-interest loans to college students and also to forgive the loans of those who became teachers, which tells you something about the huge need.
Even back to 58.
Yes. So they saw it coming. They could do the math for baby boom. They could see, we're going to need a lot of teachers. So they forgave loans for quite a while.
Wow. Until quite recently. In the book that you've just finished, you said that Gavilan had 3 crises in 4 years. 3 crises in 4 years.
Yeah, actually 3 crises and a boogeyman who we'll talk about. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the plot thickens. It's really a remarkable survival story. There's a story to tell about this faculty, and particularly about a man named Ralph Schroeder who repeatedly saved the college.
Wow. So we're starting, the first one was approximately what time frame?
Exactly late at night on May 26, 1955, a large portion of the shared space that the college and the high school had at San Benito High School burned down.
Oh, okay. All right. I remember reading about this.
Yes, this is a fairly straightforward crisis. They had 3 buildings. They lost about a third of their space. Wow. And unfortunately, part of what they lost, besides classrooms, they lost 9 classrooms. They lost the administrative records for all of the early years of the college.
So you were mentioning that there were some difficulties in nailing down things in our earlier podcasts. This is the reason.
This is it. And it's interesting. I don't think they ever really solved it. They mentioned, was this arson? They didn't really know. But, only one building.
Hard to know. Yeah.
And, middle of the night.
Wow.
And it was a William Weeks building, which means that it was particularly graceful and beautiful, and it was kind of iconic. It had this kind of look to it that was really lovely. It was built in 1909.
I was gonna ask. So, columns and.
It didn't have columns. It's hard to describe. It had a particular look.
Oh, I'm William Weeks. I'm gonna have to look that up.
We should put a picture of it on our website because there are lots of pictures of it. It was what people thought of with a few other things when they thought of Hollister.
Oh, excellent. We'll do that. The Community Matters website. We'll put that on the Gavilan College history section.
Good.
Excellent. So what changed? How did the college recover from that? A third of their space gone.
Yeah, well...
And all of their records.
Actually, most of the college space, most of the classrooms that the college used, the high school, remarkably, it escaped with relatively little damage, which is another reason they kind of think, was this arson? What was going on here?
Seems a little targeted.
Yes,
yeah.
But this has a happy ending temporarily because that old saying about a problem can be an opportunity. This really became an opportunity. The high school and the college were too intertwined, and we'll talk more about this in a minute. But they were too intertwined, and this gave the officials a chance to separate a little bit. So they looked at some property right across from the high school on Nash Road, and they were talking to the owners of that property, before the embers were cool. And so they bought, I think it was 35, 37 acres, something like that. The orchards on this property still had fruit on the trees when the deal was closed.
Oh, my gosh.
And it included apparently another beautiful old building, the old Carol Vesey home, which was very stately, and they really wanted to preserve that. And it was just a lovely kind of setting for some collegiate activities. So they added 3 portables. They created a quadrangle. And here's where they're really trying to communicate. This is not the same old San Benito Junior College. They started to call it San Benito College.
Oh, the first name change.
Yes.
Okay.
And they dropped the junior for reasons that you can probably imagine. Junior, it kind of sounds...
Absolutely.
And it was part of a trend after World War II. Nobody today, except Santa Rosa Junior College, retained that in the name. Everybody pretty much wanted to get rid of the junior and just communicate, we're a college.
We're a college. We're the first 2 years.
Yes. Yeah. So they had a new name. They still shared all of the faculty. All of the faculty still taught at both, which is going to come back to haunt them. And the music, art classes had to be shared because they didn't have facilities. They had to share PE facilities, which made the students mad because the high school teams got first pick.
Yes.
So the community college teams said, well, we're not very good because we never get to practice because they're always in our facilities. Yeah. So, but it was by 1963 when they left the site, there were 9 buildings, and it was functional.
Wow! So from an existing structure and 3 portables in 8 years,
yes,
they expanded to 9 buildings.
Yeah,
is that including the original building?
The Vesey building, yeah. At some point that got torn down, but I don't know when. We have to ask Cliff Cardosa about that, but yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing growth spurt.
It is. It sounds better than it looked at the time.
Okay.
Because this actually, it didn't happen very fast. The growth pretty much came at the end, and during the mid-'50s, there was a terrible, terrible period of low enrollment. And the enrollments dipped 30, 35. Wow. Graduating classes were 7 or 8. And this leads us to our second crisis.
Yes. And so we're now at 57, 6?
1950, well, it kind of starts in 54. Okay. But so the second one involves the boogeyman that I mentioned.
Yes. Who's the boogeyman?
Hartnell College.
I know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're nearby. They're still with us.
I will never go to another athletic event kind of impartially, just okay, well, whoever wins, I hope it's Gavilan. I am going to root my voice off against Hartnell College now. I am an implacable foe
So
now.
What did they do?
Oh my God, they were terrible. So anyway, I have to start back a little bit.
Okay.
So San Benito College was born underfunded. And then the high school district, which was responsible for nurturing it, starved it. And in fact, the high school district for many years had the nasty practice of using state funds that were supposed to go to the college, using them for the high school, which is not okay. So, as we said, by 1956, there were very few students. There were very few grads. It was the smallest, quote, junior college in the state. And, it's ironic because everywhere else, colleges were booming. I mean, their enrollments were going up. Everybody was doing well. And parents started to feel angry at how small, how limited the community college was. And this discontent started to percolate. Okay, so that's happening in Hollister. Meanwhile, in Salinas, Hartnell, which is bigger, Salinas was and is a bigger town, and Salinas drew students from Hollister. Now, by law at that time, a high school district had to give its students junior college opportunities, whether it operated a junior college on its own or whether there was one nearby, or whether it had to pay busing costs and any other costs for students to go somewhere else. That was the law. You had to make that opportunity available.
So, oh, wow. Okay.
So a number of students went to Hartnell. And in 1954, Hartnell started a campaign to force Hollister to pay for any San Benito County students who came. Now, what was seen as fair is we pay for any who go to Hartnell who are going there because they can't get what they need at our college. That everybody thought was fair. But Hartnell wants the Hollister, the taxpayers, to pay for everybody. So, in fact, Hartnell told the 6 students who were there told 6 of the students who were there that semester to leave, that, they were going to kick them out because Hollister wouldn't pay for them, and kind of said to the students, well, blame your own school board. They're not paying for you. So the San Benito County School Board was outraged. And
understandably.
Yes, I think so too. And they stood up to this. And the position they took was they would pay for any legitimate student who couldn't get classes in Hollister that they needed, but they were damned if they were going to pay for everybody. So they stood up to it, and Hartnell backed down. And at the time, there were 10 Hollister students total at Hartnell, although the Hartnell president said, well, we had to do this because we have so many students from Hollister.
Right.
Well, there were 10.
They're
the local
over-impacting our...
Right.
Oh, right.
It was a story, and it didn't hold up to scrutiny.
Yes.
So, by the way, the president of Hartnell at this time...
Oh, yes, let's give him credit.
His name was Ching, and he's a very interesting character, J.F. Ching. He seemed to have kind of grandiose expansionist plans, and he had another big idea that he wanted to convert Hartnell into a 4-year college and become the beacon of enlightenment in the area.
Yes.
And it was against state law. But he persisted. State officials actually visited him and said, knock it off. It's against state law. You can't do that. So he asked his local legislator to float a bill that would change state law so that Hartnell could do that. Anyway, it never came to anything, although it did come to something, actually. They did start a board to kind of talk about, well, there isn't a 4-year college very close.
Right.
There's San Jose, and then there's Cal Poly, and there's nothing in between. And it eventually led in the 60s to the establishment of UC Santa Cruz. They did not choose Hartnell.
Thank you, Hartnell.
Yes, or Salinas. They chose Santa Cruz. So anyway, he had these big ideas. So in 1956, Hartnell came back more seriously, a more serious threat. This time, the Board of Trustees at Hartnell voted to charge San Benito County students, no matter who they were, so charge for all. So
only San Benito County.
Only San Benito. They didn't do this with any of the students from Monterey or from
interesting.
So now people in Hollister get really mad because this is going to.
Well, it's a target.
It is, and the costs are going to be huge, and it's clear that there's an ulterior motive, and so what they said the ulterior motive was to bankrupt San Benito College so Hartnell could swoop in and take over the people, the buildings and the college and so forth. So that was apparently what they were, it's bullying. San Benito County was furious because they knew they would be easily outvoted if it ever came to a vote. Salinas was bigger, And then there's this group of parents in Hollister who are supporting this.
Because they want their kids to go to the bigger school.
Yes, and they want more opportunities. So Frank Bauman, who was usually very, he was an official at the college starting in 1938, very circumspect, very kind of proper, very uncharacteristically, he spoke at a meeting, and this is what he said. "There's no sense in any of this. J.F. Ching has precipitated all this. He wants to destroy this junior college." And there was a real sense. I mean, there was $35 million in assessed tax valuation in San Benito County, and they saw pretty clearly that this is what Salinas wanted.
Okay.
So and then Salinas and the parents had an advocate on the board who was trying to, she got nowhere, by the way, but she tried.
Yes.
So eventually the board decided again, we're going to look at every student who petitions us to go to Hartnell, and we will decide on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to pay for everybody who goes to Hartnell. Okay. So now the real crisis.
Yes. Well, may I just ask one question about, was anybody able to go to any college? I noticed you said the word petition to go to Hartnell College. So did they have to get a release in some way?
By now they did. I think it was looser before this, but once Hartnell started, I don't know for sure, but this is my sense of how it worked. I think by the time Hartnell was, passing resolutions and saying, I think they tightened up and said, and in fact, the real crisis came in May of 1956. San Benito College had 35 students. That month, 15 of them petitioned to go to Hartnell. Which it was a body blow.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would have been the end. The paper said they were a vociferous group of prospective Hartnell Panthers, and this is a real financial threat. Plus, how bad does it look when 15 of your 35 students decamp?
Exactly.
So the board looked petition by petition. It okayed 6 of the petitions, and it told the rest of them to basically shut up and go back to class at San Benito College. But everybody could see that they were just going to keep coming back and trying, and this could wear the college down. It was battered. It was tiny. It was a critical moment, and the board knew it. And so they started to talk to the acting director of the college, James Ledden, wonderful, wonderful Renaissance figure who could do everything and who probably was sorry that he agreed to do this. Anyway, he recommended new courses. He talked about hiring new teachers, estimated cost, $20,000 more. And he basically said, put up or shut up. If we're not going to pay for a college, then shut it down.
So almost a Renaissance.
He was, and he was good at what he did, but he also had a great faculty. They wrote a pamphlet. They got busy. And when San Benito School Board, Board of Education, stood up to Hartnell backed down.
Okay.
So the enrollment started to increase, and the board started to take actions to save the college, and things got a little better.
So did any good come out of the Hartnell crisis?
Yeah, actually, a lot of good came out of it. I guess I have to say the first thing is James Ledden, I think, wonderful person, really probably didn't enjoy being in this kind of firing squad type leadership position. And at some point, the board identified Ralph Schroeder, who was a math teacher at San Benito College at that time and at the high school, as the person who was best qualified to lead the college. And around that time also Hartnell backed down and San Benito College enrollments increased. And Ralph Schroeder was the single best decision the Board of Trustees for either college probably ever made. He was brilliant. He was insanely hardworking. And he devoted the next 35 years of his life ceaselessly, unselfishly, to building the college. So it was a good decision. So those things, he was an asset beyond compare, and he had a strong faculty who backed him. So yeah,
an important partnership.
Yes. So by fall of 1957, enrollments are up. We have Clifford Cardoza, who's a well-known figure in San Benito County, energetic, sociable, young guy, Portuguese-American, talking about his time and his relationship with Schroeder, who recruited him to help the college. So let's listen to that.
Schroeder, who is my superintendent, asked, Cliff, I want you to start a men's social club, the Junior College Men's Club.
He knew the right person to ask, boy.
I became the president.
I'm sure you did.
He was the one that was instrumental, and he's saying, can you do this? I said, sure.
So Clifford Cardoza really helped the college institute some student activities, which it needed.
Oh, wow, that's great. Now, Schroeder, I think I've seen pictures of him. He had the most amazing countenance, the smile, and if I'm remembering the right pictures.
He was energetic. Under his leadership in those first couple of years, things really looked up. He had a good staff. He had a strong vision. They finally had money. Things were getting better. Enrollments were going up. And then in April of 1958, the third crisis. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so, and what shall we call the third crisis?
The third crisis was an accreditation crisis.
No, accreditation. They got all kinds of great reviews from Washington in the 20s and and now we're
So there was an accreditation visit, as still happens today. In fact, happened this week.
This week, yes.
From a state committee, and they came in April of 58, and some things didn't go so well. They had a bad start, but they issued a report in October, and Schroeder was confident that, he was going to get a good report. And in fact, he was wrong. They praised a few things, but there were a lot of deficiencies. They had a lot of complaints about things that were not being done to a state standard.
Wow. So was this the kind of thing where, like today, you might get an interim visit or you might get a visit again in 6 years? Was this one of those where they're setting them up for an interim?
They would close down the college, they would close down accreditation. It would only be continued through June 3rd, 1959. And to continue without accreditation would mean to lose apportionment funding, which would basically mean, plus, who wants to go to a non-accredited college? You can't transfer your units.
You can't do it. Yeah.
So it basically looked like the beginning of the end at first.
And what in particular wasn't being done to state standards?
Well, they had a list of 20 deficiencies.
20. Oh, man.
But the main ones were the emphasis was on transfer curriculum, and there was not parallel vocational programming. And this is a time when 2/3 of the community college students statewide didn't transfer. People needed vocational education. So it was not an irrelevant point. I mean, this really had been neglected, and it's a small college. It can't do everything.
So it had focused more on the pre-transfer type curriculum.
This is a college that was proud of its academic excellence, that really, had an eye firmly fixed on UC Berkeley to try to make sure that everything met an academic standard. Wow. And, there was no money left over and they didn't. So there were other problems too, though. The faculty were probably very happy to, bittersweet to hear that the accreditation team thought that they were carrying weekly workloads that were far too heavy, that they were inappropriately heavy for college teaching, and that's because they were still doubling at the high school. So, they were working their tails off. College art and music students were mixed into classes with high school students. They didn't like that. The separation had not been total.
Oh, wow.
And they thought the library was inadequate, along with some portable buildings that they didn't like. They wanted a curriculum for night students. They thought there should be more remedial classes in English and math. Students, there was a fairly good library, although the building was not good, but the library itself was good. But students weren't going there. And then, despite Cliff Cardoza's best efforts with his men's club, they complained that there were not enough student activities. So there were some pretty serious complaints.
So they were looking at the holistic experience for the students, and they felt like the students weren't getting the full experience.
Yes. And then the crowning blow was apparently they had gone into some local stores to interview local people, which I guess they used to do. And they walked up to somebody in a store and said blah, 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 blah about San Benito College. And the person said to them, "What college?" So
Oh, no.
that kind of gave the impression that the college had not completely integrated well with the community, and that was kind of painful. So anyway, college officials were quick to point out that, these city slickers had this highfalutin idea about what a college should be. And this is Hollister. They have they're doing their best locally. But they, to their credit, although they made the point whenever they could, they didn't waste time trying to fight it or argue. They got busy to protect students' rights to transfer, and then they got busy trying to save the college.
Wow. And so what did the report have to do with local control?
It has everything to do with local control because, as we just said, the commission that visited them, the Accreditation Commission, these are people from big college with fancy pants classes in esoteric disciplines. And one of the local ranchers, Rocky Lydon, became very vociferous. A lot of local people were really, it was like stirring a hornet's nest.
Yes.
And he thought the accreditation report stinks. By the way, he's going to become a founding Gavilan College trustee pretty soon. But he said, why can't San Benito County have a small college with modest offerings, a transfer curriculum, and a few commercial courses? And this is this kind of strangled cry for local control and not having these state standards that city slickers come and impose on you. And it wasn't really heard right away. But this is the argument that eventually is going to win the day. But then in our time, it's a quaint relic. State standardization and state control.
So much a part of our lives.
They won in the end, but there was enough of a victory for the local people so that it's going to rescue the situation.
It almost rallied.
Well, Hollister rallied, but you can't ignore a negative accreditation report.
No.
As you know, they're going to shut you down.
Yes.
So they had to work hard, and let me lay out their options. So one was to go without accreditation, which means losing the apportionment funds, and the students wouldn't be able to transfer. The college would die. Another one is to raise money and improve, but everybody, especially these condescending city slickers,
these outsiders,
they were like, we know you guys are not going to want to pay more for a college. We know you're conservative about paying taxes, so we don't think you're going to do that. But if you do, pat on the head, that's fine. We'll give you all the support we can. So that was an option.
Yeah.
Another one was to just shut down the college and pay what they said would be about $755 per student per year to send students to other colleges.
Because there was still a requirement that they offer the first 2 years.
Which we discussed, exactly.
Okay.
Another would be, Hartnell is lurking there, join another district, which they would rather die. They're not going to do that.
There is a lingering feeling.
Strike that off the list. And then the last option is to start a new district with more of a population, more of a tax base. But, that's a problem because other colleges already snapped up a lot of the neighboring towns, and the only likely candidate to join a new district was Gilroy. They actually looked at Watsonville, and then Cabrillo snapped up Watsonville, so they couldn't get Watsonville. So all of these options are costly, especially a new district. But Hartnell was there lurking. So students, to the rescue. Students joined the fight. The student government wrote a very strong defense of a local college, and 3 students who I want to name because I think their names should be Rosemary Winter, who is Muriel Winter Brim's younger sister.
Okay.
Jerry Lashley, and a veteran, World War II veteran, Alfred Solano, protested any link to Salinas and explained why students needed a local college. And they went on the road. They went to the Rotary Club and so forth. So what happened is Schroeder made a plan. The faculty backed him completely. The students rallied. And amazingly, the community backed them. Wow. And without this, it all would have gone under. But the community responded and enrollments went up. It was like magic. It was
recommitment.
It was extraordinary. Enough of the community stuck by the college that enrollment topped the mark of 100 students in spring of 59. And then in fall of 59, they were up to 205, partly because they revitalized the night school.
Yes.
So things were back on track. And then I suspect there was some behind-the-scenes maneuvering. and Donald Grunsky, who was in the state senate. He was the local state senator.
Okay.
And he happened to be chair of the state senate education committee. He was a San Benito College supporter. He probably got to work behind the scenes. And there was a meeting in October of 1959, and the Accrediting Commission was apparently getting some credit. The Freelance said that they had a complete reversal of the group's former stand, that their last check of the Hollister campus was sufficient and they weren't going to come back. Suddenly they announced they're going to reassess their accreditation in December.
Oh.
And they even said they're going to have new people. There are going to be other people, very carefully chosen people on this accrediting team. And they said ahead of time, which is, this is
very special people.
Well, this is a pretty good indicator. They said there would be every indication that accreditation would be given. So they said that ahead of time. So they're kind of hinting here that
no, you will. Oh my!
Somebody pulled some strings.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, the college really turned some things around.
Some changes.
Yeah. So it was not a surprise in
Yes.
March of 1960, but it was a vindication that the college was informed that accreditation was being restored.
Wow. And so we're now reaccredited. We're still San Benito College, and we're still affiliated with the high school in such a way that that the community is required to provide those 2 years.
Yes, although everything's starting to change in the late 50s.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to get to.
That affiliation with the high school. Yeah, I mean, your district still does have to provide some kind of community college possibility or experience, but a lot is going to get rewritten as the educational master plan is rewritten in the early 60s,
Yes.
and everything's going to change. Poor Schroeder, he must have cried when he got the accreditation report that it was okay, and he must have been ready for a long vacation. And instead, there's going to be one last disaster, and this one finally is going to finish off San Benito College, but out of the ashes, it's going to lead to a new college, Gavilan College. Yes. And, eventually that's going to lead to us sitting here with a well-established college.
So our first 50 years were an amazing story of survival and reinvention. And now we are on the cusp of the community college movement. And I guess we'll pick up there next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about the birth of Gavilan College.
Excellent. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this podcast and telling the story of the first half of our first 100 years.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.